at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. Now, going to Tripoli, Webster Griffin Tarpley is our guest, the author of the unauthorized biography of George Herbert Walker Bush and Barack Obama, a doctor of history and an economist. Tarpley, you let us know the day before you were leaving last week, but that we couldn't talk about it until you got into the country. We understand why. You've got a lot of courage, my friend. You're well-traveled. Why are you there? What are you witnessing in Tripoli as the globalists admit, a top general admits to Congress, they're preparing for ground war?
Well, I'm sort of on a fact-finding mission, Alex. Thank you for having me on. The idea here is to come here and see what is actually happening. And there have been a number of people coming through here. You've probably seen Cynthia McKinney, might have seen Wayne Madsen, number of academics from the United States, people from other parts of the world have been invited. So there's a kind of a modest flow of people coming in to do essentially a fact-finding mission. And I think these are things that people ought to be aware of. This is a very, very extreme case of imperialism, right? What you might call the New World Order. This is, in many ways, the leading edge of it. And I would just like to share some impressions, first of all, of what happens when you get here. You can't come in the normal way through an airplane or even through a boat. You could come from Italy by boat, but they won't let you do that. They have a no-fly zone, so there's no commercial aircraft traffic, and even the Libyan fishing boats along the Mediterranean coast are now being shot at by predator drones of the United States as they go out and try to provide some fish for people's dinner tables. And the food here it's excellent, but it's very heavily based on fish. So what happens is you drive in, essentially. You drive across the Tunisian border usually, and the first thing you see is there are these checkpoints every 5 to 10 kilometers. I think probably we went by maybe 40 or maybe even 50 of these checkpoints. And you're driving through the North African desert, right through the Libyan Maghreb desert in the night. The roads are filled with heavy trucks because there is commerce going on. These sanctions are not as watertight as people think. And you come to these checkpoints, and this is partly the Libyan army, but they're also supplemented by volunteers, and many of them are women volunteers, and quite a lot of them are black women volunteers. And what you could see is Gaddafi has a very serious base of support, or maybe it's more accurate to say the Libyan government.
He's now handed out 2 million machine guns, grenade launchers, hand grenades, and when the U.S. NATO force rolls in there in October, it is going to be an absolute bloodbath.
I think that's very important, Alex. This is something that they've told us about. They've essentially given 1 to 2 million Kalashnikovs, these assault rifles, as you mentioned, and that's people's war. And if you really are a dictator, this is something you cannot do. If Gaddafi had been in reality what the U.S. propaganda says he is, why, as soon as everybody got those Kalashnikovs, that would have been the end of the current government, and instead the
Webster, they now admit, Amnesty admits, the State Department, no rape gangs with Viagra. They admit the baby incubator story was fake. It's the same group doing that. They admit he didn't run to Venezuela all those times. That was to destabilize. And they now admit, the top admirals come out and admitted, yes, we're trying to kill Gaddafi. Well, obviously, when they're blowing up all of his houses and government buildings every time he's in them, obviously they're trying to do that. They tell us it's not a war. It is a war, and I meant to get the reports yesterday. I mentioned it, but even Reuters and AP are admitting that Congress has been told, yes, the ground forces are ready and are going to be needed. The troops have told us this for late September, early October. This is absolutely insane. But please continue from Libya, telling us what you're seeing.
Well, just in terms of this people's war, I would warn everybody that the U.S. or NATO or anybody's invasion of Libya is going to be an act of incalculable folly, and it is simply a gratuitous bloodbath.
It's going to make Black Hawk Down look like a picnic.
A picnic. And even with all of the bombing that has gone on for so far, what I'm amazed at is the placid attitude of the Libyan people. Normally, you'd think that a foreigner of a country that's bombing Libya, that you'd be lynched or you'd be in danger, and nothing could be farther from the truth. There's still a tremendous interest in people coming from abroad, and they're grateful to have you here. But now, an invasion is going to be very different. I'm talking to an ambassador, a distinguished older man, extremely cultured, perfect American, perfect French, knows the ways of the world. And he said, well, if the invasion comes, he said, in my household with my wife and my kids, an extended family, we did a kind of census, right, what we could do militarily. And he said, well, we figured we had enough RPGs to knock out about 4 tanks and enough ammunition and Kalashnikovs to take care of, a couple of platoons. And that's just one family. And remember, the Libyan population is 6 million, and it breaks down about 1 million are under this rebel council, under this gang of terrorists. Because
they're under the Al-Qaeda command.
Al-Qaeda, it's what it is. And the rest of the other 5 million are loyal to the government and to the institutions that have been really successful here in raising the standard of living from one of the lowest, right, rock bottom in Africa.
But notice, Al-Qaeda used against the Russians, Al-Qaeda used against the Serbs, Al-Qaeda used against the Iranian Shiites. Now they're putting in Al-Qaeda-backed Muslim Brotherhood people in Egypt. I mean, don't folks get it? Anwar al-Awlaki hanging out the Pentagon, Mutallab, the underwear bomber, gotten on the plane by the government. Al-Qaeda is a secret army of the private banking cartel.
Right, it certainly is. But in terms of what happens with Libya, the other thing about it is, it is a tribal society, and as people talk about it, right, they say everyone is a member of one or the other of the tribes. Now, what that means, though, is that even if the government is decapitated or these other things they're trying to do, that will not solve the problem for NATO, because there is a ready-made combat organization which is available in the form of the tribes. And there is no way around this, no matter what you do, as long as anybody lives here at all.
And you can't buy them all off. And you can't buy them all off.
No, you can't, because there's a very strong sense of nationalism. There's a devotion to having a united country. So I would simply urge people, if you look at that vote in the House of Representatives last week, it was 238 to 180 concerning cutting off the money. And it means that it lost. 238 voted for war, 180 voted for no money and no war. Now, that simply means if you could shift 30 votes from the war column into the peace column, you would cut off the funding. And I think that's worth a real try. Number one, if people are from the Tea Party or Republicans or conservative Democrats, they've got to realize this is Al-Qaeda. The people that run Benghazi and Darna and Tobruk, those are terrorists. Those are veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan.
The leader admits he killed Americans in Iraq, and we're unpatriotic because we don't support Al-Qaeda, Webster.
There we go. And the other one, though, is the massacre, the atrocities against black Africans, people from Mali or Somalia or Chad, under the rebel regime. That ought to be enough to move the entire Black Caucus out of the war column and into the peace column if they're not there already. And then there's this great man-made river, and the fact that when they talk about revolution, everybody in this country will say Gaddafi and his government, that's the revolution. That's the anti-colonial, anti-imperialist revolution that actually means something. Whereas these people in Benghazi, those are monarchists, those are religious obscurantists, they're the Muslim Brotherhood, and Al-Qaeda.
Well, I mean, they openly want the old British monarchy, back monarchy group put back in.
Yes, and in fact, that's what they would do. So I think militarily, the stuff you hear about the progress of the rebels, this is simply nonsense. But I want to go back to those checkpoints in the night, because I want people to understand, if you want to know where the front line of the fight for civilization is, it's those Libyan soldiers, volunteers, women, many of them, standing out there in the night, knowing the only hope of those rebels is to get terrorists into the city of Tripoli, and they're going to have to get them through those checkpoints. And they're not going to checkpoint every 5 or 10 kilometers, and we were lucky. We got to go by because we had a little bit of extra getting through some of these checkpoints. But for a lot of people, it's a laborious process, but they're willing to do it. And again, the support, it seems to me, is virtually seamless. And nobody here is going to let NATO come in, and nobody here is going to let those Benghazi tribes come in. A lot of those people in Benghazi turn out actually to be foreigners. They're from Afghanistan or Pakistan or wherever they're from. They're from Egypt, some of them.
It's same old Al-Qaeda, Al-Qaeda. Now, Webster, their only hope then is to kill Gaddafi. Gaddafi knows that. He's committed to stay. And I'm not saying he's an angel, but compared to Al-Qaeda, I mean, I'll pick,
Compared to that, I think we'll take it
yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. I'm not for Al-Qaeda, folks. I know that makes me un-American. I mean, we're real history. Our government created Al-Qaeda, and I'm against it, so I'm anti-government. But now, Webster, their only hope is to kill Gaddafi, and it's on. I mean, it's now in the news that they're telling Congress behind closed doors, and it's come out in major newspapers, that, yeah, the invasion is on September, October. They're going to call it a peace mission. That's also in the news. Rolling the tanks in. I mean, and whether this was a good war or not, he didn't even go to Congress. At least Bush did that. This is high treason. And even Nadler, the obese gun grabber up in New York, has said Obama is becoming a king, an emperor. This is unacceptable. So this is anybody who believes in rule of law has got to be against this new war.
Let me just comment on these attempts to kill Gaddafi, because I've visited now Gaddafi's compound, his villa, I guess you'd say, bombed out. What NATO seems to be using is these are kind of a projectile that divides into 8 parts. It seems to be it breaks up into.
It's a cluster bomb.
Yeah, but it's something more than a cluster bomb, because it's more heavy duty, and so it's suitable to destroy something about the size of a football field, but it destroys heavy buildings. I mean, it's not just a shrapnel fragmentation device. So I've been in Gaddafi's villa. Now, a couple of things about this. You go into the room where Gaddafi would receive the visits of African leaders, governments, heads of state, and other diplomatic events of state. And you look at this. This is not the palace of I don't know who. It looks like the rec room of a comfortable upper middle class family. But there's nothing bombastic about this. There's nothing super luxurious. I mean, there's no.
The point is, he lives in a tent. Well, Webster, we got to go to break.
Hard time.
Absolutely. I want to come back here. The point is, they say, oh, look, he's got all this money. Yeah, he's sitting on gold, knowing that when he got invaded, he would be able to pay for things. Ladies and gentlemen, a totally illegal UN war backed by Al-Qaeda, started by the West 4 months ago, a month before the UN ridiculous resolution. Now the International Court of Criminals, they are the criminals, is saying arrest Gaddafi, and they're telling you this isn't a war as the ground troops are readied off the coast. From Tripoli, Webster Tarpley, straight ahead.